What's up, guys? Ice Young here alongside Cassandra Negley, and we are excited to talk about WNBA power rankings this week. A lot has happened in the last 2 weeks, so we are going to get right into it. Let's take a look at our current WNBA standings. We're going to look at the top eight because the top eight make the playoffs, and we know those are coming in less than a month. It's the New York Liberty that stay at the top at 26-5, Connecticut Sun at a close 2. In the third spot, the Minnesota Lynx, who I have a lot to talk about later, at 22-8. In fourth right now, the Aces making their way back after the Olympic break. They're at 18-11 overall. Seattle Storm are in fifth, actually tied with the Aces. In sixth, it's the Phoenix Mercury. Seven, the Indiana Fever at 14-16. And we know those young guns are climbing. And then at eighth, it's Chicago Sky that are hanging on. I must tell you that the ninth team right now is the Atlanta Dream. They're 10-19. The Sky are 11-18. So any given day, a couple of games, and we could have some flip-flops. Cass, let's get into your power rankings on what you've seen over the last couple of weeks. Your top four right now are New York, Minnesota, Connecticut, and Indiana. Tell me.
I know you want to get into Minnesota, so I'm going to leave the groundwork for you. But I did think about putting them number one. Those were two very convincing wins. But the Liberty have just kept solid, kept consistent. They're working Sabrina Ionescu back into the lineup. She missed a few games. Manaj Laney finally got some post-Olympic break minutes. So they just kept number one for me. Obviously, the team that I moved up into fourth was Indiana. I based it a lot on what we've seen out of the break from them and other teams. I just like the way they're flowing offensively. Like it seems to be a different player every night stepping up next to Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell. They've talked about getting Aaliyah Boston involved more, which I would like to see, but I dissected a bunch of their numbers for the Caitlin counter this week, and all of their numbers are pretty much up. Caitlin's turnovers are down. I know you are big on the turnovers. Her turnovers are down since the break. So I've just been impressed with them. Obviously, like defensively, not the most solid of teams.
Hmm.
But for the teams that they've beaten out of the break, I thought they deserved that slot.
Yeah, and I mean defensively, we don't expect one of the youngest teams in the league to be the best team, but they absolutely are battling. They're 3-1 since the break. They've beaten the Mercury, they've beaten the Storm, and they only lost by 10 to the Lynx, which was a very hard fought game.
Mhm.
For me, I'm with you in saying the Minnesota Lynx could have been number one this week. And I think if we do this power ranking in 2 weeks, they could earn that. I just feel like what Cheryl Reeve has put together in terms of the consistency, the 3 and D. I mean, they play defense connected on one accord. They look so solid versus the Las Vegas Aces. They beat them back to back. I'm not sure the last time we've seen the Aces take back-to-back losses in such a controlled fashion from the other team, but I just thought the Lynx look like championship contenders. They look like they should be in the WNBA finals this season. And the way Nafisa Collier is playing, yo, if you haven't watched Nafisa Collier, please go watch. We talk about Asia Wilson a ton, but Nafisa is making a campaign for her team this year. I've been thoroughly impressed with them. I still have New York Liberty, Minnesota Lynx, Connecticut Sun, and Seattle Storm. I liked what I saw from the Connecticut Sun in terms of getting their first win over the New York Liberty this season. We know that's been a tough team for them to beat. I felt like that was a moment where they got over the hump. Obviously, Marina Mabry has gelled very well with this team early. She played fantastic versus her old team in Chicago, and they look very, very solid. Okay, let's dive into our second half of the power rankings. Your 4 through 8 are Las Vegas, Phoenix, Seattle, and Chicago. I have Las Vegas, Phoenix, Indiana, and Chicago. Tell me your thoughts behind where the Las Vegas Aces are right now because you have them fifth.
Yeah, the Aces are still just kind of slogging through. Like they don't have the offensive output that they had before the break. And certainly like that stretch where Chelsea Gray came back, they looked much more like themselves and
Yeah.
they've lost that. And I don't know if it's just wear and tear from having four Olympians go to Paris and Asia Wilson carrying that team and Chelsea Gray isn't herself. Those stats are not what we usually see from the point guard. So
Mm.
I don't know if the injury is impacting her or not, but as you said with Minnesota, the flip side of that is that the Aces took two really bad losses to a team above them. And so I just feel like they're still kind of in that fifth area. And
Yeah, I
defensively,
completely.
like defense has been an issue.
I was gonna say I completely agree. I was fortunate to call their game versus Chicago Sky where Asia hit the buzzer beater and throughout that whole game. That was the only thing that seemed lacking to me was, yeah, sometimes their defense is a little stagnant. It happens when you have so many players that can play one-on-one successfully, but defensively, they don't look like the same team that we've seen win back-to-back championships. And it's like they have less than 10 games to figure it out, to get back on one accord before we talk about the playoffs. A team, though, that I was very, oh yeah, Cass, go
The
ahead.
thing about the Aces, just to throw in one more thing about the Aces, I think we forget that when they won in 2022, like very good team, but they
Mm,
were not, miles away from everyone else. The
mm,
reason they were so dominant last year was their defense really, really tightened up. And so now we're kind of back to 2022 where the
mm.
defense isn't as tight. And so we're seeing these closer games. It's just opponents are able to take advantage when they couldn't in 2022.
I completely understand. Kelsey Plum told me that. She said teams are playing us different. They understand what we're doing now. They have learned. And who wants to lose and let someone win a championship 3 times in a row, right? So everyone's getting better. The last team that I would say I'd like to hint in my power rankings is Chicago. I'm not from Chicago, but I have a love for Chicago like I do for Jersey. Like it's we breed dogs, and I just really love the way that this young Chicago team is hooping back to back heartbreaking games. They had the Connecticut Sun and were winning that game, guys, was less than a minute and then lost. They were in the game with Las Vegas Aces. Kennedy Carter makes unbelievable play after play, and they lose the last second buzzer beater. So this young team is literally right there. They know it. Teresa Weatherspoon knows it. Kennedy Carter knows it. And I just would love to see them continue to grow and make sure that they really do solidify that playoff position. They have it right now. They've got to make some separation from Atlanta. But I was really impressed with what I saw in person from them in a tough week where you play the Sun and the Aces and you take both teams down to the wire. It's a good young team right there in Chicago. So the hottest team in the league, the Indiana Fever, a team that haven't made a playoff spot since 2016. And that was their ultimate goal for this team this year. You get back-to-back number one picks and you say you have to be in the playoffs. You have to get to the top 8. Cass, what have you liked from this Fever team? And can they make some noise in the playoffs?
I've liked how they've played after having more time together. Like we focused so much in the early season on, quite frankly, like how bad they looked and how disoriented and how frustrating it was to watch an offense after you would watch Caitlin Clark
Yeah.
be a prolific offensive presence with Kate Martin and Gabby Marshall and all those players in Iowa. They have found their footing together. Like pressers on the court, on like these social media clips, you can tell that they've formed a better chemistry. And honestly, like it just takes time to do that. Like Caitlin Clark, as a rookie point guard, has been given the benefit of time in that she had a second training camp in her first year. I
Mm.
mean, that's huge. And so Kelsey Mitchell, you had mentioned, is having potentially a career year. She's averaging about what she had before. It's just like you said, she has someone to pass her the ball. You have Lexi Hall stepping up to hit threes.
Yeah.
I just think they've taken advantage of the time. They've come on a huge run. And Lynn Dunn had said last year, if they didn't make the playoffs, it was going to be a disappointment. I do think that they can take a game in the postseason. I don't know if they're going to win a series, but certainly when you have a player like Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell is used to winning in college, but you have this recency of winning with a
Mm.
player like Caitlin and Aaliyah, and that does carry into a playoff series.
Yeah, absolutely. So playoffs, seeding is 1, 8, 2, 7. So right now they would be matched up with the Connecticut Sun. Could be an opportunity, right, for the Minnesota Lynx to jump the rankings and get in second. Is there a difference to you whether who they could play in the first round, the Lynx versus the Sun?
It's tough to say right now. So Indiana is going to play Connecticut this week. I think that'll be a better connector of this question just because adding Marina Mabrey does change the Connecticut Sun. I think what will be huge for Indiana in the postseason is getting hot from 3. That's really how we saw them just pull away from Seattle.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see how they do against Connecticut this week.
Certainly excited to see what this young team can continue to do and in terms of just securing a playoff spot and then what they can show with, hey, Leah Boston, Caitlin Clark, and what they're building in Indiana. Well, with W teams having about 10 to 12 games left in the season, as it's winding down, we get to talk about awards and who we feel like has showed off and showed out this season. So, Cass, let's start with MVP. I have been very clear about this. It was almost like our in Dawn Staley we trust for NCAA tournament. It's in A'ja Wilson is the MVP. I just think she continues to show us that she's the best player in the league. I think that she's dominating in terms of scoring the basketball for her team. She's second in rebounding in the league. She's first in blocks in the league. She also averages 2 steals a game, just doing a little bit of everything. And she continues to get better. If there's nothing that impresses me more about A'ja Wilson, to be quite honest, it's that every year we see her, she continues to get better. She continues to dominate. And she is the reason why the Aces right now are fourth. I think there are other players who've been playing inconsistent, but she has not. She's brought every single game. Your thoughts on MVP?
MVP, I think A'ja is still the front runner, but I think the gap is a lot smaller than I felt like when we talked 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Napheesa Collier is playing out of her mind, including those 2 games against the Aces. Just elevated numbers around the board. She's shooting like 60% after the break compared to 40% before. I think the interesting thing about Fee is that we lost track of her a little bit because she was out for 5 games heading into that Olympic break. And maybe there was some concern about what she would look like when she came back. I know when I saw her at Olympic training camp, I was like, like, is she actually going to play in Paris? Clearly she played and played well, and she's playing so well for the Lynx right now that I think she has a strong case to take some number 1 votes from A'ja. The MVP vote is the top 5. So some other strong candidates. I think Sabrina Ionescu has done a good job leading the Liberty. Of course, winning MVP as a guard is always difficult. Obviously more difficult when you have A'ja Wilson doing A'ja Wilson things. Alyssa Thomas's numbers look pretty similar to last year. Obviously, her scoring is down because Brianna Jones is back, and scoring, I think, was always the issue for voters last year, but she'll probably be on some ballots. Caitlin Clark will be on someone's MVP ballot. I promise you that. We see this a lot with rookies. As long as she gets 1 point, as long as she gets on one person's 5th place ballot, like she will be in the MVP rankings.
Yeah. I have obviously A'ja, Napheesa, Alyssa Thomas, Sabrina Ionescu. I completely agree with that. She has been the most valuable player this season for the New York Liberty when she's been on the floor. And then my other one is Clea Copper. I just think what Ka has been able to do, how she started this season with 8 30-point games. Obviously, her first time playing in the Olympics and her Olympic debut was fantastic, but she has just continued to look so mature, so consistent for the Phoenix Mercury, willing them to a couple of wins, honestly. And they need every bit of her to continue to be a team that's in the top 8 and have an opportunity. So I just think what she showed this year has been really dominant from like the guard position. Okay, let's move into our rookie of the year / our all rookie team. Let's go team first. Give me your all rookie team.
The players I'm considering for it, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, obvious. We talk about them ad nauseum, so I'm going to put them to the side. Rickea Jackson is having an incredible season in Los Angeles. Certainly, I think if Caitlin and Angel weren't kind of running away with a rookie of the year race, maybe we'd have a third in there. Camila Cardoso didn't start the beginning of the season due to injury, but has really started to come into her own. 5 blocks against A'ja Wilson. Like,
hey,
probably should not have been, guarding Kelsey Gray on that inbound play to end the game, but I digress. I'm not the head coach. I also want to highlight Liberty reserve Liana Phoebish. She's playing incredibly well, great defense. She's had to do some spot starts for Benijah Laney. Not a traditional rookie in terms of she came out of the draft. She's from Germany. I think she's 24, 25, 26 years old, but she's technically a WNBA rookie. So I think I have her on my team right now.
Yeah, completely agree with those. Cardoso coming off a career high. She had 18 points in another game. She is just continuing to get better every single time she steps on the floor. Definitely could be in a defensive player of the year conversation a couple of years to come with some maturity. Absolutely. She showed that she can do that. But you're absolutely right. We know about the two that are, really in this head-to-head rookie of the year conversation. Seems like every other week, Caitlin is breaking this record and then Angel breaks this record. The most recent one for Angel is that she's tied Tina Charles for the most double-doubles in a season as a rookie. She's at 22 right now as of August 27th. And we know what CC continues to do for the Indiana Fever. Our coach of the year. Coach of the year. I'm going to go first. I'll take the pressure off you, Cass. My coach of the year right now is Cheryl Reeve. It's not someone who is a stranger to being coach of the year in the W. She's won 4 championships in the W. She knows how to win in this league, and she knows how to put together a good team. I mean, the team right now for the Minnesota Lynx and what she got from free agency and Courtney Williams, the growth that we've seen from even a player like Kayla McBride at this point in her season, to Nafisa Collier, and the way that it all gels. Alana Smith, a player that I have come to love watching her play every time she steps on the court. To me, it's Cheryl Reeve and what she's been able to do with this team so far. Cass, your thoughts on Coach of the Year?
Reeve is definitely in the lead for me. At the Commissioner's Cup, she told us all, I think it was after their win, you all love your super teams. And I thought about that a lot lately because when you build a super team, sometimes you're asking players, we saw this in New York, to do something a little bit different to fit next to the superstar next to you.
Yeah.
I think Cheryl Reeve, especially with the pieces they added in free agency, has said, okay, like Courtney Williams, you're great in the mid range. Like Fee, you're the leader. Do your thing. Kayla, let's get you, hot from three and melded together players who do certain things well versus saying, let's bring in all this talent, like top end talent, and figure out what you're going to do well.
Right.
Sandy Brondello will probably pull some votes because Liberty are up top again. If they win out, or no, they lost to Connecticut, but they're going to be close to that winning percentage record, or most wins in a season. Stephanie White for the Sun might pull some interest. Do want to highlight Christy Sides and Teresa Weatherspoon. They might pull some votes. I think usually we see this go to coaches who have lifted a team to the top. And again, like Reeve is in the lead for me, but Christy Sides and Teresa Weatherspoon have done a lot with that young talent.
Yeah, completely agree. And then, to be honest, we can't forget about Becky Hammon. I think the Aces could. I think yeah, because how hard is it to three-peat, right? If we're really voting and we're using, our perspective, how hard is it to three-peat in this league? And so it's been a harder season already because of the Olympic break, because of the injuries that the Aces have sustained earlier in the season, not having their point guard in Chelsea Gray. So I also feel like if the Aces can still manage to come out this thing top three, and three-peat, obviously, right, we'll give her the nod then. But even top three, I just think with all the different distractions and things that have come this season, it still would be very impressive to me to see what Becky Hammon has been able to do with this core group and keeping everyone together and keeping the level of play as high. Okay.
Ballots are due on the last day of the regular season. So I'm curious what would have to happen for you to vote Becky Hammon as head coach, knowing that your ballot is due then?
Great question. I feel like what would have to happen for me is
what would make you voter? Yeah.
For the Aces to not lose any more than 2 games the rest of the season.
Okay.
I think they can go on a solid stretch where they win 9 out of the next 11, 8 out of the next 10, and look like a team that's trying to three-peat and turn it around and finish that strong, right? I think, unfortunately, they've lost a couple of these tiebreakers and head-to-heads like the Lynx. But again, I think there's still room to show that they are the best team. And if she can coach her way out of this little rut that they're kind of having, it also shows, shows her level of ability in her job. Okay. We'll see. We shall see. We'll keep an eye on that for 2 weeks. Our Defensive Player of the Year awards. Cass, I will start with you. Who is catching your eye defensively this season in the W?
Asia and Fee are obviously up there. One player I want to highlight who I don't think will be my vote right now just because of what Asia and Fee are doing, but Ezzy Magbagor with Seattle has been a year in, year out, all defensive team contender, shall we say, Defensive Player of the Year contender. She's a player like, Camilla, who one day she's gonna really be on top of this award. Her 2.3 blocks per game are second, 6 defensive rebounds a game, 10th. Steals per game are a little bit down, but an elite rim protector for a pretty solid Seattle defense.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I love Ezzy's game. I think she's so crucial to what Seattle is able to do. Her and NECA in a front court is dynamic and very long. Completely agree with that. Yeah, I think it's just so tough to see what Asia and Nafisa Collier are doing. One hit for Nafisa Collier. She's also second in the league in steals per game at 2.1. I feel like we talk so much about her scoring, her ability to pass, but she also is an elite defender, does get in the passing lanes, and is very, very smart in that way as well. Asia is third in steals. So you talk about rebounding, defensive rebounding, blocks, and then steals. It's just kind of amazing, honestly, what Fee and Asia are able to do in all areas of the game. Okay, our sixth player, sixth woman of the year. I always love this award because it helps everyone to understand in the game of basketball that the bench is important. You cannot just go with the starters. You need to also have a loaded bench. My sixth player of the year right now that I feel like has shined and we've seen the most out of is Tiffany Hayes from the Aces. This is a player that was retired at home, chilling, and decided to come back and try and win a championship with the Aces. Tip Hayes is averaging in 20 minutes. She's averaging 8.8 points, 2.5 rebounds, 2 assists a game. She's shooting 49% from the field, folks, and 34% from three. I don't expect anything less of her because she's a vet and we know what she's capable of. But anytime that you get that type of production off the bench, especially for a team that's trying to three-peat, it's so much more important. And so to me, she's a front runner for this. Cass, who else have you seen for a sixth player of the year opportunities selections?
To your point about Tip Hayes, the Aces bench averages 15 points per game. Hayes contributes most of them. She's a huge spark for them. Sophie Cunningham is coming off the bench in Phoenix, has provided a spark for them. And Leah Edwards is coming off the bench for Washington. Kennedy Carter, I think, had this award locked up early, but she played her way out of it and made her way into the starting lineup. And we've seen a lot of players who are going to be flirting with that threshold for qualifying for the award.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think Kennedy Carter, though, played herself into another possible award, maybe the most improved this season. Y'all know I'm big on Chicago and the way that they play, but I just think the level that she's taken her game to, what it means, me speaking from a player perspective, to play for a coach that believes in you, to play for a coach that allows you to be you and to be comfortable, where you can be confident in yourself and your abilities. And that's what you're seeing from Kennedy Carter in the way that she's playing. I mean, she is lethal in the mid-range. I haven't seen a team yet be able to stop her first step. And I also think that she is growing. Like, we're seeing a young woman grow into who she is, into what she knows she can be. And it's really cool to see. So I feel like, my most improved pick right now is Kennedy Carter. Cast your thoughts.
I hate this award. Like, I really do. It's so difficult. Like, everyone interprets it all these different ways. Like, I mean, do you put Asia Wilson as most improved? She improves every year. Like the margin is small for her.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
but I think Sabrina Ionescu again is
Ooh.
a solid candidate for this award. Her shooting percentage from the mid-range, hitting that floater, like really developing her game there, I think makes her the strongest candidate. Giving them a complexity. We saw this a few years ago with Jackie Young working on her three-pointer and going on to win the award.
I also think another person is Dejanay Carrington for Connecticut Sun. You talk about how you look at the award, most improved, her role improved. She stepped up. Her defense is improved. I'm sorry. We talked about guards who could be, talked about for defensive player of the year. I definitely think Dejanay Carrington has brought a high level of intensity on the defensive side of the basketball for the Sun. And also her scoring ability in transition. I think that she's gelled so well with Connecticut in that starting position, and their team, at the top of the standings that is doing very good because she has grown in her role. Cass, thanks so much for talking W Power Rankings with me. Well, as the season winds down, we're excited to see who's going to sweep up these awards, who's going to lock in their playoff spot. Stay tuned for more of our coverage.